Hi everyone, this is Krista Moore with The Krista Moore Show, and thanks so much for joining us today. As you know, this show is brought to you as a new way to learn from industry experts and thought leaders, and I'm thrilled to have a great friend of mine and an amazing health coach, and her name is Cyndi Bulka, and she's going to be walking us through a winning model that she uses for her coaching practice. So excited to have her today, and I'm going to just ask you to do an introduction to our audience, and then we'll get started.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. I've been really excited about this. My background is largely in yoga. I've been a yoga teacher for 25 years, owned a yoga studio, a very successful yoga studio for 16 years. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided that I was kind of done with the business ownership, and it was a great run, but I was ready for something different. And I really wanted to get more into working one-on-one with people in small groups, doing really transformative kind of work that went beyond the scope of yoga classes and yoga therapy. So I enrolled in the program at Duke University's Integrative Medical Center as a health coach, completed that program, and for the last 4 years have been doing health and life coaching, which has been really great.
Yeah, and I met Cyndi a few years ago. I think I actually knew you before then, but not as a health coach and a yoga instructor. And I got to enjoy 2 of her retreats that she has, annual retreats, and she has some amazing retreats. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I'll go back and start with this story. I have a dear friend who is also my business attorney, and 20-some years ago, when I first started with the yoga studio, she helped set me up in business. And whenever we would do our yearly or every couple of years get together and kind of review business goals and whatnot, she'd ask me questions. And when I went to redo my business setup 4 or 5 years ago, she said to me, "I've got some notes from our last meeting, and I asked you, what do you want to be doing in 10 years? And my answer was, I want to be traveling the world, teaching yoga, and transforming lives." And that's exactly what I'm doing.
So I enjoyed this past May, we were in Greece at a yoga retreat, and the year before that, we were in Tuscany, Italy. And I just want to have a shout out to all of the business owners and small business leaders that joined this call today. I was just telling Cyndi how surprised I was that there were so many business people that want to hear more about how to get the balance and integration into their lives. You said you weren't surprised.
No, that didn't surprise me in the least, because I think, and I speak from experience, having been a small business owner, that and when you've got 16 balls up in the air and you're the one who's ultimately answering to the bottom line, sometimes that balance in life suffers. It's hard to turn it off. So while people in those kinds of leadership positions oftentimes have a great desire for that integration and to amp up the joy factor in their lives, oftentimes it suffers at the hands of the other things that go along with owning the business, running the business.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted her to share this model with you, because many of you might have heard me speak about the wheel of life, where you're kind of scoreboarding yourself in different areas to see where you're a little off balance, but she takes it to a whole other level. And we're going to be walking through that model today. And we kind of still call it the wheel, but it's a little bit different than maybe the traditional one.
Right. And the Duke model also works off of the wheel. And this is an integration of my experience, my intentions, professional intentions, and I call it the 8 tenets of joyful living. And so everything that comes under that umbrella works towards creating a life of intention that's joyful.
So maybe we can show a picture of what we're referring to. And Cyndi has so kindly offered to make this available as a downloadable resource after this event. So we're looking at a picture of the wheel, and maybe you can just talk about that scoring component for a moment.
Right, so you'll see that the wheel is divided into 8 pieces of a pie, and along each line there's a 1 to 10. So what I'm inviting you to do is, as we go through all of these different arenas, to give yourself a score. And then at the end, you'll connect the dots literally and take a look and see how balanced your wheel is. And then from there, I'd invite you to sort of distill it down to your top 3 priorities, the first 3 areas that you really want to work in on. And today,
yeah, we're going to start at the beginning, start at the top of the wheel. And one thing I just wanted to mention too, I think of this from a business perspective, and you probably do in your coaching practice, that I call it objective-based coaching, right? So from a coaching's perspective, when we're working the wheel with any client, we're helping them identify the areas that they need to make a priority and continue to focus and work on, and then set some goals aligned with that. So that's really the outcome.
yes.
Yeah. So why don't we start at the beginning? So what is the number 1 at the top of the wheel?
The first place we start is with you. And this, as Krista just said, this is really a very personal process. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. It's very, very personal. But at the top of the wheel, I put loving you, because really your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship in your life. And loving you creates the context for everything else.
And I would imagine when you're working with individuals that there's a reason why this is number 1, right?
Right.
But there are a lot of people that tend to do this negative self-talk going on in their head, and it's, there's like this little person in their head telling them they can't, or they're not good enough, or they aren't, worthy. How do you address that?
Well, I mean, it's really a dive into how do you perceive yourself in relationship to the world. Do you believe that you're a worthy, deserving individual? How do you talk to yourself? What's your language with yourself? Does it include words like should have, can't, never, always? That kind of self-talk is really insidious because it can underlie your thought processes and what you think you become.
Yeah. And so using this model, it'd be, and kind of working through this exercise with us today, it would be thinking about, okay, for me, on a scale of 1 to 10, where would I rank myself in terms of loving myself and putting myself first? So that would be kind of how we could walk through it.
Right.
What about number 2?
Well, the second one I put is body basics, because this is our temple and it carries us through life. So, and you've heard many people say, and I agree, if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything else. It's the foundation of everything else that we do. So basically that means that you're tending to a balance of rest and activity, of nutrition, hydration, of keeping your health numbers in good order. A balance of sleep is really important too.
And I'm thinking a lot of people on the phone, this is probably an area that they're going to score a little lower. I know personally, and just Eddie and I, working in business together and being married, we're eating late at night. We say we're going to do some activity over the weekend and we're too tired, or we just want to sleep in. I mean, I feel that I would definitely give myself a low score. And I go up and down. I mean, there's certain times in my life when I feel like I have that body basics piece really solid through good habits, but it is an area that most of us, I think, busy executives and
notoriously fluctuates for people.
Yeah.
And part of really achieving that balance is understanding that there is some ebb and flow, right? And we have to give ourselves permission, because when we get too rigid about self-care, we can only sustain that rigidity for so long before it goes out the window.
That's probably exactly what happens. And I think healthy eating is a real strong point in the body basics.
Right. I'm an advocate of a plant-based diet, not necessarily a vegetarian or a vegan diet, but a plant-based diet, eating as close to nature as you can. And I always like to think of, I want the least number of hands on my food before it goes in my body.
Yeah.
So the ideal would be having a garden and eating out of your garden. But everybody's unique. Everybody has a different repertoire of foods that give them the kind of energy that they want. So
it's really just understanding that,
and achieving that balance. But it is unique to every person. So when we look at that, we look at what makes you feel good, what gives you the kind of energy that you want.
Well, and I don't know anybody that would say that what makes them feel good is just eating a lot of junk food and processed food and drinking a lot of wine or having too much sugar and carbs. I mean, I've gone through that focus on more clean eating, and I feel like a different person.
Yes.
I mean, after maybe 2 weeks of a solid change in diet, it completely affects my mood, my body type. It's amazing.
It is pretty amazing, and the older we get,
It's this that goes away.
and the older we get, the less forgiving the body is of those digressions, you know.
That's right.
But in general, sugar is not your friend. Processed foods are not health friendly, and they affect our energy, which affects our moods, which affects our attitudes. So it's not just about proper nutrition, it's about the ripple effects in body, mind, and spirit.
Well, and the just to emphasize too, hydration, because I don't know how many times I think, oh, I've got to drink more water, got to drink more water, and what a difference that can do.
Right. Well, when you're eating a plant-based diet, it's a lot easier to stay hydrated too, because plants have much more water in them.
Yeah. That's a good point. So the third section of the wheel you refer to as habits. Why don't you describe that a little bit?
So we all have habits of thought and habits of behavior. It's just part of the human condition. We get neural pathways in our brain from repetitive activities that we do, repetitive thoughts that we do. So I invite you to look at what habits of thought and behavior in your life serve you or don't serve you.
Yeah.
And again, I advocate the middle way, you know, moderation is key. And then, you know, the whole idea of habits, people often think, well, habits are like, oh, I'm addicted to sugar, or I'm a smoker, or those kinds of habits. But habits of thought are really interesting to dive into and very powerful to look at changing. Wow,
so how would I determine what my habits of thought are? Like, how do I do that?
Well, you know, if I was working with you one-on-one, it would be a lot of questions to sort of reveal a pattern, right? But anytime that you have what I call the slippery slope, where you have an event, an action, or something happens, and then you have a quick reaction, that's usually a habit of thought, right? Where I just go right there. So stopping, taking a deep breath, and taking a look. Oh, well, maybe it doesn't have to be that way. But we tend to
get in a rut mentally.
Yes.
Yeah, and the other thing with habits too, just to bring up, is I think technology has kind of taken over a lot of people's lives in terms of being on their phone all the time, or having a habit as soon as you get in the car, turning your phone on, or, you know, just looking at the social sites, or staying up and getting in a habit of, before you go to bed, really diving into your phone, and hours could pass.
Right.
And that could be dangerous.
Well, technology is a wonderful thing, and it's to be used to better our lives. But unfortunately, it can be quite addictive, right? To feel disconnected. For some people, feel really uncomfortable. When we go on retreats, we see this. That people feel really uncomfortable to not be connected to their phone, to their computer 24/7. To not ever have any space or quiet time in their lives. So I say use technology to your best advantage. And again, that's an individual thing. Some industries require people to have more time in their life engaged with electronics, but we all need downtime from it.
That's right. And I know that Eddie and I, we were just talking about this the other day, that we've decided in the evening we're going to put our phones in a basket and, you know, just avoid them. And because anybody that needs us can get a hold of us on the landline. And it would just be a way for us to pay more attention to each other and give each other that time instead of sitting there looking on our phones. So I think that's changing habit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes we get into those habits with technology and we don't even realize just how much time we're spending on our phones, in our computers, watching TV. You know,
I mean, it'd be interesting to kind of keep track of that and get a better sense for it.
Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I invite clients to, just for a day, kind of make note. How many hours have I spent in front of a machine?
Yeah. And then the fourth one?
So the fourth one I call habitats. And habitats are the places you dwell. And what we need to understand is where we dwell, whether it be home or work or anywhere, that energy influences us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say that in my training, but especially in my practice of working with people, I've been amazed at just how powerful making changes in this arena can be. So,
and what comes to mind for me when you talk about habitat is your surroundings, right? And some people might live with a lot of clutter or disorganization, and it's just not comfortable. They might be comfortable.
Well, I think that your home is your sanctuary. So your home should feel like a reflection of the best parts of you. It should feel comfortable and peaceful and be conducive to creativity. Same thing with the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in workplace we have lighting and noise and distraction, and it can become a really toxic environment, which doesn't lend itself to creativity or productivity.
It's interesting that you say that. We have a room in the front of our office, an extra room that we call the dream room. And it has lots of light, and it has a nice couch and chairs, and it's kind of where we go to separate ourselves from the phone and technology to get creative.
That's a wonderful addition to your office here, is having that space. And I'm an advocate of creating beauty in your life, all over. And, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but to surround yourself with beauty, whether it be light or color or artwork
or flowers
or whatever it is, I mean, that lifts us, and it creates an environment that's conducive to creativity, conducive to making change.
So how would you get someone potentially to recognize that by changing their habitat, it could change their mood or their sense of well-being?
Well, let me ask you a question back, is if you walked into your home and you had a half a dozen unfinished projects with all the things that go along with each of those projects scattered all over your house, you've had a long day of work and you come home and you see the clutter and the unfinished projects.
Stress level
Yes.
just went up out of the roof.
But what I think that causes commonly is this feeling of overwhelm and chaos, and that can become a driving force in your life.
Yeah, it's a great point. So clean those closets. Next, you talk about growth.
Yes.
And that would be number 6.
Right. And in essence, that is what kind of commitment do you have to your personal evolution? So a continued commitment to personal growth. It can be in relationships, in your work, commitment to your own health and well-being. Are you growing?
Yeah. And this is probably the one that really hits home for me, I think, because I live a life very purposefully about continuous learning and development and trying to inspire others to be the best that they can be. But I have this motto, and I'm sure I'm not the one that made it up. I think it might have even been Jim Rohn, but he said, if you're not growing, you're dying. We're like trees. We have to constantly be continuously growing, or we're going to get stagnant and digress.
And what that means is that we're willing to play our edges. We're willing to go into our discomfort zones in order to expand.
And that's where change happens.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else you want to add on growth?
Well, I think that living with intention, that's my motto, is that I live a life of intention. Hence in 10 years, I want to be traveling the world, teaching yoga and transforming lives. So to really go through this process and connect to how do I want my life to be, and then creating a purposeful, intentional game plan to make that
And that's
happen.
really where goal setting comes in, and vision and mission, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that requires support. Especially when we first get started, we're all excited, but then it becomes overwhelming because we don't know how to break down that big goal into smaller goals and actually get there.
Yeah.
And we do need support from people to continue to grow.
And to
we don't
help
grow in a
get there.
vacuum.
That's right. All right, and what was next?
So the next one is integration, and this is really from the yoga world. It's been coined and said so many times, the integration of body, mind, and spirit. And that is an active practice. So I would ask you, what kinds of things do you do to help integrate the body, the mind, and the spirit? Because they are inseparable.
Mm-hmm.
And as we think we become, if our body is not well, our minds can become toxic, so there's an integration of body, mind, and spirit that we have to work at.
I think we forget about that, right? Day to day, we're thinking more that compartmentalizing them, or at least I am. What would be some examples of ways that you could practice getting quiet or being aware of the integration of mind, body, and spirit?
So in a nutshell, any kind of mindful movement where you're linking breath to the moment, to the movement is really key. And so then that hits a couple of notes. It gets you exercise and gets you breathing. But things like yoga, tai chi, qigong, mindful walking in nature, taking a hike, but just being quiet as you do so and mindful of each step kind of thing. So meditation, prayer, reflective writing, artistic pursuits.
Yeah.
They all are ways that we can strengthen that connection.
And the first thing that I feel when you were describing that is the amazing feeling that I had at the end of the week of the yoga retreat, where every day we were practicing this. And then when I came back, I was like, I felt like a new person. And I actually have stayed on that level plane because I continued to be more mindful of the integration.
Right.
Yeah.
And some people think, oh, I don't have the time for that kind of commitment. But truly, you can cultivate that kind of mindful integration in 5 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as waking up and not even getting out of bed, but doing a conscious breathing practice. And then brushing your teeth mindfully. I mean, there's thousands of ways.
Just being present is what it makes me feel. Like just being in the moment, present about what is going on around me, how am I thinking, how am I feeling. And I think you really do need to get quiet.
Yes.
I got into a habit of like morning readings and some quiet time, and then a little bit of exercise in the morning just to get my body moving. But small little changes, I think, in this area can make a significant difference.
And there's things that we can do in our everyday life that are really powerful. Spending time in nature is one of them, whether that be sitting on your back porch in your garden, or spending time with animals is really great. Spending time with small children.
Yeah. Oh,
they're so pure.
I have an announcement to make. Speaking of small children. So I'm a little tired today because last night we got a call from Kara, and she was going to the hospital. She's due 3 weeks from now, and she had a planned cesarean on August 7th. But for my friends out there, I'm a grandma as of 3:16 a.m. this morning. We were all at the hospital. 6 pounds, 6 ounces, 20 inches, beautiful, healthy baby girl, Kaylee Elizabeth Barwick. And I am not, my name is not going to be Grandma, I'm just saying. It's Kika. We all have to have a cool name. But my niece and nephew have called me Aunt Kika because they couldn't say Krista. So everyone is telling me that needs to be my name. We'll see if she can say it. So I wanted to give that shout out. Mm-hmm. So I am going to be very mindful and present with my grandchild. I'm really looking forward to that change in my life. And I mean, I hear these wonderful things, and
yes,
you have another one coming, right?
I have another one coming at the end of August, a little boy.
That'd be great, or sooner. You never know.
Or sooner, yes.
So,
but that's it. Your life is forever changed now.
Mm-hmm. I believe so. Yes. When I held that little peanut in my arms last night. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, blessings to you. That's wonderful.
That's actually a really good transition to the next section of the pie, which has to do with the heart.
Right. I call it heart wisdom. And basically, when you live mindfully from your heart, not your head, but your heart, that equals authenticity. And living an authentic life is really, I guess, boils down to what we're all here for. The purpose of life is to be authentic, to be all of who we are meant to be and are capable of being. So that involves a lot of different aspects, one of them being relationships, that we cultivate positive, reciprocal, affirming relationships in our life with intention. With a lot of intention behind that. And that involves mutual respect, but also what I call right speech, is that we think and feel before we say.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the way that you say that. And so you're responding opposed to reacting.
Exactly, exactly. And we don't often realize what an impact our words have on people. Not just the words we say, but how we say them. So speaking with love and kindness, even in conflict, we can have right speech.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful. It can change relationships. It also can define relationships and help us decide which ones we don't want to continue to invest in.
Yeah, and I like the name of it, heart wisdom, because it is feeling and thinking with your heart and not necessarily your head and your gut.
And this goes back to another area, but you know, our culture is go, go, go all the time. And I have a little saying, I say, go, go, go is a no, no, no. Because it doesn't give us space and time for all the things we've been talking about. But it also keeps us up in our head. And we are really happy to have good thinking brains, but living a heart-centered life is where joy really happens.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then the last one.
So I call this faith, and to me, faith is what brings it all together. And some people's toes curl when I say the word faith because they think that I'm being religious. But faith is not dependent upon any kind of religious affiliation. Faith is really this connection and trust that we have that we're part of something greater than our small selves. And faith that, yes, indeed, we live in a benevolent universe, that, yes, indeed, we have all the gifts and talents that we need. Yes, indeed, our nature, all of our nature is pure and loving. When we peel away all those layers, that's what we all are at essence.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like that when you said that there's something greater than ourselves and that sense of belonging to something bigger and more powerful.
And that we're not separate. To feel separated from this greater good, this greater fabric and tapestry of life is what creates feelings of isolation and loneliness and ineffectiveness, you know? So being part of something greater, whether it be your immediate community or the whole of the universe, is a really important piece of this. Unshakable faith.
Unshakable faith. And that's that. I love how we started at the top of the wheel and how we're ending, and they just really almost kind of come right back together.
Well, and all of those areas on the wheel play with each other. There's always that interplay of one arena and another arena.
Yeah. So we want to share with the group that's on the call today. Actually, it's some exciting news. And I want to refresh a few of your memory on your 10-year-old self, which has been this process and concept that I've been speaking a lot about and writing about. Actually, we have our first retreat at the Advantage Business Conference in San Antonio on August 21st. So if you didn't sign up for that retreat and you are going to be in San Antonio, it's actually a workshop, 75 minutes, but it's on the subject of your 10-year-old self. And I really think it goes to that integration, goes to the heart wisdom, goes to a lot of these different components where we're trying to discover who we are authentically and the belief that's, excuse me, if you can go back to that innocent age of 8 through 11, you know, and we're just, you know, pulling out 10, that it's a time when purpose and passion really meet. And it's who we are authentically. And if we can go back and play again and be 10 again and bring some of that out, it will help us move forward in our lives. So we've done a lot of survey research. I've talked to this on this subject with Cyndi numerous times. And what are your thoughts on your 10-year-old?
Well, when we were on retreat in Greece, Krista first told me about her book and the premise behind it, and prompted me with some questions, getting me to think about my 10-year-old self, which was really a joyful and enlightening thought process, because it wasn't just all play. There were some really significant things that happened during that time in my life. And then you and I started talking about, well, what if? What if we could kind of combine the work that I do
Yes.
and the work that you're doing in 10-Year-Old Self and create a retreat for a
That's
whole week in
So-
Southwest France.
So we're doing it. Yeah, so actually, next year Cyndi has reserved 3 weeks
Yes.
in the south of France at a lovely retreat center named,
Well,
we're not
I'm
going to give
going
the name.
to butcher my French and say Domaine des Mornay, I think is how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
But it's in Southwest France, near Carcassonne, which is the castle region of Southwest France. It's magical. And it's a really special place. And we're in the process still of pulling together all the details, but we've confirmed the dates.
Mhm.
And we'll be announcing that soon.
So we're looking at one of those weeks, the 3rd week, which we believe is going to be the 1st week in June, is going to be themed Be 10 Again. And along with her practice and all this mindfulness and walking through these different areas of our life, we're going to spend some time and quality time on deep reflection back to when we were 10 through a lot of fun activities and kind of bringing that out. So when you leave, has set your intention for what you're going to do to be more playful and to bring more joy and happiness into your life.
That's what it's all about.
And no better place to do it than countryside of France for a week.
Yes.
Hey, so excited. So if you're curious about that, and 1 week, it's limited, believe me, limited seating, limited rooms. It's a small group. So if you are really curious about this and you want to get on the list, make sure you email me. And we'll also share with you some additional information soon. So that was our announcement, and I think we're about out of time. What I'd like to do, Cyndi, is show a slide that has your contact information, let everyone know how they can reach out to you or get a hold of you, and then remind them about that downloadable resource.
Okay. So you can see there my email address, but there's also a website you can go to, which is zoctihealth.com. And if you go to another PowerPoint, you can see my phone number. On the downloadable, all my information is on there. So I coach in person if you're local, or remotely if you're not. I do small group work from time to time, and like I said, these retreats, there's lots of ways to look at this. So the download will give you a really good idea of where you land with regards to this material. And then I'm here to help you if you want to further those goals, if you want to dive deeper, break it down, and actually
That's great.
transform.
Yeah, so that wheel that we showed you, there is a resource that has a few more pages that will help you hone in on your top 3 priorities and help you set goals. And you're making it available to anybody that joined today. So why don't you remind them again how they get that? What's the best way to receive that resource?
So I can download it on my website.
Mm-hmm.
You can also email me if you want it sent to you directly. Either way.
Okay, sounds great. So I want you all to mark your calendar for August 8th is our next show. So we're finding that we have so many more interested guests that instead of just doing it once a month, we're probably going to be following every other week or every week as soon as we get certain people that we want to interview. So you've got to meet Ray Thompson. Ray is a pastor. He's an engineering manager. He's also an author and a speaker. And his book just came out titled 1%. And what happened to him is this miraculous story of how he had a 1% chance of living and how he survived. And he's just amazing, inspirational. And I really hope that you can take out 30 minutes and hear his story. It'll certainly be inspirational for you. So I'm hoping you can join us on the 8th at 2 o'clock. And you can also pre-register at the KristaMooreShow.com website. One last thing, we would love for you to follow us on Facebook, our show, the Hat Lady Chronicles, and anything about Race to Amazing, my new book that's being published in August. You can find all that information on one Facebook page, which is Krista S. Moore author page. So if you could search that and find it if you're not connected, that'd be a terrific way to stay in touch. Thanks for joining us, and have a fabulous week.
Thank you.
Thank you.